Okay. So, hey, we're live. Welcome
We're
back.
live.
What's up, Matt? Matt, how are you?
Not much. How you doing?
I'm good. Hey, can you give me a sound check? Talk to me. I'm gonna stop the music and see that I'm catching your audio. Let me
Can you
go
hear
ahead.
me?
I mean, I can hear you. I just want to make sure that. Go ahead and talk.
Hello. Check,
Okay, yeah.
check.
Yeah, that looks good. That looks good. So for everybody out there, I was showing Matt that we're using OBS, which is an open broadcast software. And when Matt talks, which we're about to introduce him here, he comes in over in this channel and I'm on this mic, so that's cool. So without further ado, today my background is The Matrix and Matt Moser, who I'm so honored to have on the show, our brand new show, our brainchild from quite a few months back. Matt, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Well, I think my face is getting chopped off a little bit here, but other than that, I'm
Right, but
doing.
doesn't hurt. Doesn't seem like.
It doesn't hurt. Digitally, I could be doing better, but I see your green screen's look working a lot better than mine. Um, so yeah, so just a little history. Just like Brian Barber, who's a React enthusiast, becoming a full stack developer, Matt and I also met on the very same React JS group here, and we moderated for a while together, and then we came over to a Discord group with Ivan and Mario and Kawant, and we all just sort of stay in touch often, and we're technology enthusiasts, and React is sort of our center hub. So with that said, I mean, you can help me fill in the blanks, but you're a teacher, you're a software engineer, you've been an entrepreneur with software, built and shipped your own stuff. I mean, I'm probably missing some things, but welcome.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. So, I've been programming since I was 16. So, to date me a little bit, I've been doing it for about 20 years, but not
Wow.
always professionally. So, I started where there was no Google. I had to look through a book, but I still had a lot of fun doing it. And
Oh, I love that.
so I feel like I've made a good distance of it so far. But like you said, I have had my own business, had that for 3 years. Decided to close it down and turn it into a real career. So yeah, for the last few months, I have been working as a software engineer here in North Carolina. So
Awesome, man.
started out my journey in Seattle and somehow made it all the way here to North Carolina.
And it's booming. Tech is booming out there in that area, isn't it?
Yeah, I didn't even know like Microsoft has a little headquarters here. Yeah, so I didn't know that. I just visited there just the other day. It was really small,
Yeah, I noticed
but they
that
have
on
a
you.
presence.
Yeah, I've been to the Seattle office once in a past life. I got to know the Azure team. It was quite an experience. I actually got to go in the Windows 95 building, and which being Microsoft, they kept it permanently exactly the same. 70s chairs with the strange fabric, from it just was. I mean, there was CD-ROMs everywhere. They said Windows 95. It was a
Nice.
weird experience, but I loved it. They have an affinity to the past, so they kept it like a museum. Um, but
Do they
anyways,
still have like all the diskettes for you? Can you just carry around like
yeah,
all 30 diskettes for the installation?
I don't know, but it was definitely like being in an old 70s office, and the Azure team was parked there at the time. Quite an experience, and some of the Silverlight team had back then too. So yeah, so I've got equal to you. I've got a couple decades under my belt. I'm shying away from saying that lately because I just don't know if I'm telling the right story to people. Like they have like inclinations of what kind of developer I've been. But much like you, I've been on the web since the beginning, so it's been quite a ride. And I'm excited to talk about some of your experience. So, would you tell me a little bit about? Because I know, but you and I had talked briefly once about you made some casino software. I think it was.
Yeah, so previously I was a blackjack dealer,
Oh,
and
nice.
the company that I worked for wanted to kind of get into the new age, and they were doing a lot of promotions for players involving whiteboards, and it didn't really look nice. So they asked me if I could make them basically a digital representation of that. So I started out with an ASP.NET site they can connect to, and then I had several casinos in the area just come to me and say, "Hey, I want that too. I want that too." So that's kind of how my business started, and then it just kind of went from there. But
Very
yeah,
cool. That's
Yeah,
cool. I
had a
like
lot
that
of fun
about
doing
you.
it.
You and I have that in common also. Like in my career, I don't want to like. I'm not here to tell you everyone about my career. I obviously get enough time to talk about myself on the show here, but I also have had some Microsoft experience throughout the years. A lot of the bigger projects I've been on are by well-funded finance companies, and they often buy Microsoft technologies. And so I always like the fact that you've got that. I think you've had some experience with ASP.NET Core, which is pretty relevant to now. Is that a fact? I think you mentioned that.
Yeah, at my current job, that's what we're using now for our API.
Cool. How you like
Which
that?
was interesting to me at the beginning. At first, I said, well, I mean, to me, it didn't make sense. Like, if we're building a React Native app, why are we using ASP.NET Core for our backend? But as I come to realize was that the ASP.NET Core backend was built long before the React Native app was being developed.
Ah,
So, I mean, why change the technology? I mean, the point is they can communicate with each other. So, yeah, I'll tell you that it's a big difference from what the way it used to be in ASP.NET to ASP.NET Core as far as usability and using it for an API.
that's that's interesting to me too because I had actually talked to a company last year that's pretty well funded, and I was surprised to find out that they were deep into React, and but they also were ASP.NET Core. So I just thought maybe that there's something there. I don't want to say if it's a standard, but it might be something a lot of companies are doing. So yeah. Are you enjoying it? You like using ASP.NET Core? Because I don't know much about it. I know a lot about the .NET framework. I'd say.
Well, I mean, the things that I like about it are things that I like about all Microsoft, let's say programming languages, C sharp, etc. Is just basically I like the fact that it's strictly typed, right? Especially with an API, like you could kind of get away with some things in JavaScript with the front end UI, but when it comes to an API, you really want to make sure that everything is legit, right? You want to make sure that all of your ducks in a row. You want to make sure all your variables are strictly typed, and so I think that was a good choice for that. So I like that.
So like, I mean, are you talking like, do you still use WSDLs? I didn't mean to dive straight into the Microsoft stuff, but I mean, when you deal with the services, are you using Microsoft services or like, how do you, I have no idea what you're using from ASP.NET Core, the MVC model, I guess, right?
Yeah. I'm not real sure. I haven't got too much into the API. I've just spent a little bit of time making slight modifications to it.
And then
But
React
they
Native.
do,
Okay.
yeah, they use a version of CRM, Microsoft CRM, and so I think that's probably one of the reasons is there was plugins that they could use from ASP.NET Core that would go into CRM and access their data that way. So
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, look, I feel like I really took us getting together just straight to the serious. Like, okay, so what are you working on exactly with is the WSDL definition language? But I mean, let's be realistic. I mean, from a money standpoint, I mean, you've got decades in the business, and so do I. And some clients I've worked for, or some companies I've been an employee for, or contractor, if they're all open source, there's certain things that you get for free, but then that you don't have out of the box, and a lot of times, and then also clientele, like in companies you work for, some of the most funded and I mean profitable companies, not just startups, have been Microsoft houses. So I think that when I hear that a company is using Microsoft technology, I think, okay, they're funded, they're making money doing what they're doing. So, and that's a good choice. I have no problem with Microsoft tech. How's your Linux? How do you feel about the Linux side of things and LAMP?
um, it's been a long time since I've worked with it. I was doing some PHP work, and so it was easy just to deploy it to an Apache server.
That's cool.
Um,
I've been
but
using
yeah,
Google Cloud a lot for like $300. They give you $300 credit for a year, and like of course I can roll a Windows machine, but I've been rolling all their little VMs and spinning up WordPress sites and stuff, and
yeah,
it's gotten me just back enough into using VI to do like because I want to like change some templates and be lazy and not bring them all down, and enough command line where I feel okay, I'm kind of back into Linux. So that I don't know. I mean, I'm obviously on Windows 10. If you guys, if you anybody cares, but But that's cool. So you've been doing React Native lately too. What's up with that? How you like that?
To be honest, I like it because, for one, I'm not the best at making something look good, but I like the fact that because it's free and open source, there's a lot of plugins, like a lot of UI stuff that you can easily plug into it. Like yesterday, I probably spent about 12 hours. I started working on an app and it's actually already functional and I can use it. So, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that I used a lot of plugins easily and the right way, that it just made creating an app really, really simple.
So I'm going to ask you some questions because I've got some mobile experience, but from years back, I've deployed a native app to iOS. I've done some Windows Phone stuff back when it was almost cool when it first came out, and I've done some Android. But since then, I haven't done much, and I do follow the stuff. And I will say, I wanted to bring up that I saw you last night in some of the bigger React groups. I actually troll some of the bigger React groups. Maybe troll is not the right term. I go in there to promote our smaller group and bring new users in who are looking for a smaller forum to also talk. And I saw you helping some folks out, and it reminded me I've done that a few times, and I just like to see that, and I just want to like give you some accolades for. And so I'm off topic, but I saw you in the React Native group that has like 30,000 members or whatever. Um, so here's some questions from someone who knows nothing about React Native. When you deploy it, is there a transpiler that makes it, I guess, native for iOS and native for Android? Like, is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, so basically this is how it works. Both iOS and Android at its core has a JavaScript engine. Okay. And so
Okay.
what React Native does is it basically attaches to that engine and is able to run the code. So it has a native aspect, like there's some plugins that is able to contact the device and use the device features. And then there's um, where was I? So, and then what happens is then now, because that connects and there's the JavaScript engine, you're able to write JavaScript to then access the native modules. And so if you look, there's a Android folder and iOS folder that is basically the core, almost like the skeleton of each device type, right? So there's a like an Android core and an iOS core skeleton. And then when you write the code, then
Ah,
what it does, like you're right, it does kind of transpile it, but it kind of injects your JavaScript front end stuff into its skeleton that it already has.
gotcha.
So, in order to get them both working, they both have to be kind of working. They have complete project files for Android Studio, so you can actually open it in Android Studio.
Okay, that
Same
makes
with
sense.
iOS and Xcode. So, yeah, I mean that's the hardest part about it, is that because there's some iOS and Android native things to it, that you still have to learn a little bit about the native language first.
You still have to have a Mac to compile down for iOS, or you know,
Yeah, yeah, that's the unfortunate part. But
yeah, that could be a
luckily enough,
pain.
like if you have a Mac, yeah, it definitely
Well,
is.
it just means for your
You could
development
actually,
workflow, right? Like if you're developing on your Windows box, you still need to deploy over to your Mac and then run a compilation there. That's not the end of the world. It's just,
well,
huh.
actually, so this is the workflow at my work. So I develop on a PC. Once it works on the in the browser and in Android, and I'm like, okay, this is pretty good. It's shippable. I put it in my repository, download it on my Mac, run it and test it on iOS. Once that's complete, then actually we use App Center, and App Center will build both Android and React Native applications. So you don't have to technically have a Mac. You can just use something like App Center that will build. It will actually build the iOS software. So
So that's a keyword I'll have to pull out of this video is App Center and take a look at that. I've watched enough React Native live on some of the Facebook groups from some developers to see the similarities in React. So some say that you can build a React application and use most of your React code. I think you had told me that when you port over to React Native. Is that a fact?
yeah, so this is the interesting thing. When I worked on my own project and I created the website, and I said, well, now I need to make an app. I took about 80%. I
Okay.
mean, there were some things that didn't work, right? Because you had to access the device. So, but the other thing is that like at my current job, we use Webpack, and what that does, we start out as React Native, and then it transpiles it to React,
Nice.
and so it actually goes it goes backwards, and so that also means that any plugin that you use will actually have to be able to work on both web and native. So
Any plugin. Okay. Are you talking about like imports, like a certain library? Right.
yeah, like whatever whatever node module, so
Gotcha.
like
Okay.
React Native, like React Native navigation, like
Yeah.
something like that.
Okay.
If you make it for React Native and it doesn't work in web, then it's not going to work.
But
But
does
yeah, we have a single code base.
so there's a certain, I don't want to call it religion, but there's a certain amount of belief system here that this allows you to deploy to more devices, desktop and mobile, and then but keep your code bases down, because in the older days, folks were having to write separate isolated applications and separate code bases. It was just like really costly on time and development, right? So yeah,
Yeah,
I
so the
get that.
reality is like in a corporate structure, like when you have developers, right? Let's say 10 years ago you'd have your web developers, your application developers, your database developers, you have all these different teams of developers. Now, let's say if you're a startup, all you need is JavaScript developers, right? Because
Right.
you can use Node, you can do React, you can do React Native. If you know JavaScript, then you just have to learn the extra 20% on each additional thing. So, I
Yeah.
think that's the nice thing about it, and that's why JavaScript is considered the most popular language right now, I think.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I've been personally, and again, I can only inflect a little bit here. I've been writing Java. I remember the day when I was teaching in the evenings. I mean, you're a teacher, and I respect that a lot. And I remember someone bringing up the word JavaScript to me, and it was literally the first time I'd heard it, and I think it had come out like 2 weeks earlier. Okay, that's how far back I can think. And everybody in the room was like, "No, no, no, no! It's not like Java. The guy just called it JavaScript." And literally, it was born. It was like 2 weeks old. I mean, it might have been older than that, but it was actually like accepted, literally that month. And so I've come through the days of alert to console log to dependency injection and all kinds of different ways you can test. And I still have a lot to learn with JavaScript. And it's an amazing language, right? So I don't even know what my point I'm trying to make, other than we were talking a little bit before we started this live show, and we were talking a little bit about areas that you want to get stronger in still too. After this many years of using JavaScript, I think that I was confiding in you that, and also Brian, that so many times we see YouTube videos where the developer he orchestrates a beautiful walkthrough of typing all the perfect code, and he seems to know everything. Like destructuring this and that, and you're just like, okay, well, I'm learning. I'm watching this video, but the reality for me, at least, is sometimes I know what I don't know. Sometimes I got to go Google it and double check it. Like I might occasionally go look up object.keys just to be sure. Or like, how do I get the values out of an object again, the new modern way? And so I myself am a little bit, I'm leery of saying where my soft points are, but ES6, some of it I feel like I just naturally know. And then there's other areas like arrow functions that because I'm old school, I'm still writing old school functions where I'm like, I need to start putting arrow functions everywhere. And anyhow, I digress and say, like, what's your experience been with JavaScript? Like, you're a teacher, you teach it as well. I believe you teach part time. Is that a fact?
Yeah,
Yeah. So,
yeah. So I teach a couple hours throughout the week, and then I teach a 4-hour boot camp on the weekend. But I'll tell you, this is my experience with JavaScript. JavaScript made me want to never program for the web. Like when I first touched it, because I came from a background of Visual Basic and then Visual Basic.net,
right.
and then I went directly like right over to Android development. I skipped right over web because of JavaScript,
Yeah.
because it's not a strictly typed language. I'm used to like IntelliSense, autocomplete, like error handling where it tells me exactly when and where and
Yeah.
why the error is as I'm writing. And JavaScript, let's say 10 years ago, it didn't have that, right? And so it didn't tell you why certain errors were happening. Didn't tell you that you typed in your variable wrong. Like all of these things that
Right.
I couldn't live without, especially when I was learning. And so now, where it comes to things like where Babel, where it's and that's another thing where you come from, like, oh, so you tell me that I have to program for, at the time, Firefox or whatever, or Netscape Navigator, to date myself even more, and now I have to test it on every single browser. Oh, Safari, oh, Internet Explorer, all these things I have to test on. Oh, well, this code doesn't work on there. And I just saw a Facebook post I did 7 years ago that I got so mad about Internet Explorer, but then I had the same problem just the other day at work with Internet Explorer, with JavaScript. But because there's things like Babel that will basically do all the work for you and convert it to a language that the browser can read, I mean, it makes it a lot easier to use. So I would say,
so now you're a
the very
JavaScript.
first version.
Now you teach JavaScript.
Right. Now I
And
can spend like 2 hours talking to a student about, recursion, like
yeah,
this kind of thing.
well, and it's interesting. I mean, with ES6, the language has definitely matured. Like I remember having to do string manipulation in JavaScript and use mid and pop and shift just to get pieces of the string. And now they've got methods that automatically get it for you or do subqueries. And when I say that I need to learn new things in JavaScript, it's much like saying I know jQuery, but really when you meet somebody who knows jQuery, they really know jQuery. But I know enough of it where I can do find, and I can do all kinds of stuff in jQuery because I know what it's capable of, and I can Google and there's Stack Overflow with lots of example code, and you hack on it. So I would say for me as a front end developer, kind of to your point, after all those years, JavaScript and then all the cross browser testing and going through the phases of using like shims and shivs and all these things to make your stuff work cross browser. Um, you become someone who's like persistent. You like, you know what? I'm gonna hack on this stuff because it has to work on all these browsers, and these guys are paying me to do it, and we've got a big deployment base. So nowadays, when I look at, let's bring it forward, when I look at like React, I'm finally diving in and building a theme for ThemeForest, Matt, and I realize how much code this thing is taking care of for me when I use Material Design and drop in the drawer, and all of a sudden it's like I can see that the CSS divs are overlapping each other when I use the debugger, but it's not showing that in the screen. So I know that there's almost this. I'm not going to go back to the VB6 days where there was tons of software back then that did a lot of crazy stuff, and it was very component based, and it still is with .NET and Visual Studio. But is our front ends with React model and the component based model, are we headed there? And in a way, I'd say that's what's supposed to be saving us time in building the front end, right? It's like a single page application. You use Material Design, you can slap it up, you get the cool drawers, the menu. I'm using Next.js lately, and it's got its own way of handling router and dynamic templates. So I digress and say it's not so much JavaScript-y, even though it is JavaScript in there. It's still a little bit like rapid application development for the UI or component based. I don't know.
For sure.
Clearly,
No,
yeah.
absolutely. I mean, the
Coffee,
one thing
my coffee's
that I
kicking in,
like
so let me.
about
Yeah, go ahead.
no, you're fine. So I'll give you an example. Like when I was working on the project for the casino, and I switched from using ASP.NET to PHP jQuery, it was like I want a template, and I just want to loop to the template, entering the data into the template. Like I wrote code and a function just to do that, and then when I'm like, well, what's this React thing, right? I'm like, this is exactly what I want. This is how it should be done. Like I shouldn't have to write a loop and then like do a select the ID of my template and clone and do all these other things just to kind of have a loop of components. And so when React fixed that for me, React actually changed me to I really like to work on front end stuff, except for making it look good. Like I'm just not the best with that. But if you tell me how you want it to look, I will do that.
So I'm moderating my mute button here because I've got those rescue dogs on my property, so sometimes they bark. So forgive me for the late reply, but Yeah, and it's interesting because sometimes I run into folks who say that, who are like, the design part is what you have tough parts with. But I mean, when we work in teams, a lot of times there's a lot of folks on the team, product owner even, who knows what they want, and they'll look at a competitive application and they'll have it in their head. So obviously, with tools like this, if you're capable to be like, yeah, you want a menu there, or you want it on the right, or you want to be able to toggle the menu over there, like that's where the power comes in. And you do enough of those projects, and like I find myself just perusing Theme Forest and being like, this is my favorite admin theme. So that if I'm going to build one, certainly I'm going to borrow some of the functionality and layout. So yeah, I don't know if I have original designs myself, but that's how I go about it. But
Well,
yeah,
and then think about like, even let's say 5 to 10 years ago, you didn't have things like Font Awesome or even
true.
Material Design, and so it's like, so I have to make my own icon for the save button. Oh, I have to make my own icon for all this thing.
Yeah.
And so I, I mean, just those kind of things just make my job easier because I can make it work. Like, you tell me what you want to do, I'll make it work. I'll just take somebody else's design. Like, fine for me.
Well, I guess it's the standardization of design patterns. I mean, people may talk poorly about WordPress. I don't know if they really do anymore, but there was a time, and there's still some things that it's challenged by. But by being propagated to, some say, 33% of the web, at least the retail web or the small e-commerce web or whatever, you saw all those themes hit like Theme Forest and all these other places, and so design and themes and what a website really became really kind of proliferated and became that, like your top navigation like that. It's responsive like this. A certain amount of shadows under your buttons. The iconery started coming around, like you said, like and all the different design styles. They started to standardize. So yeah, we're definitely in a with React and even Vue. I don't know if you have any Vue experience or Angular at all, but they're
No, I
all
haven't
sort of.
touched either one of them. Yeah.
I messed with Vue and just enough to kind of talk about it and just say that it's component based design, at least in those two. I imagine Angular has some things there. And yeah, so they're kind of following design patterns for rapidly building standards for the web, right? So
Well, I think a
yeah,
lot of it too is because people are used to doing certain things a certain way. So when they access an application, they expect, oh, if I have a profile, then I want to click on the profile image to get to my profile. Like, people just expect those particular things. And I think mobile development has a lot to do with that. Because, if you see an app, like, you can look at it based on the buttons and the title bar. Oh, that's an Android app. Oh, that's an iOS app. And so now people want that same kind of mentality with the web. Like, I want the login button over here, or I want, they expect these kind of user experiences. So if everybody expects the same user experience, why wouldn't you just reuse the user experience templates that people already have out there? Why would you spend the time doing that where you can focus on functionality, database design, and things like that?
performance and all those other things that matter. Can I ask you some more stuff about React Native? Um, Does it compile down? So I recall that you could deploy your iOS application and primarily focus on the web browser control or the embedded browser. Is that so? Like they were considered like hybrid apps back then, and that was like 5 years ago that I was doing that. You follow what I'm
Right.
saying? Like in Electron, it's
Yeah,
called.
they
Yeah,
used to do cross-platform. Used to be that, right? What was that one? Phone Gap, I think, was probably one of the
right.
biggest, right?
Yeah,
Where they basically was like, oh, here's an app, but it's really just a web browser
right.
that talked to a web page, right?
Yeah.
But no, this actually compiles down to native code.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
so so no, and actually a lot of times now you can't use like a web view or something like that to, like, let's say, use your authentication, like,
No,
for
it's
you can't use that
sandbox.
anymore.
They don't let it. Okay.
So
Right on. So React Native. Hey, how do you feel about so like if we were to bust out right now, maybe get on the computer for a second. Um, do you want to do you want to what do you want to do? You want to whip out like a React Native project from default or Like, how hard is it to make one? It's probably as easy as an npm install, or what?
All right, so this is what I do because all of my personal projects are all based off of Firebase because I don't want to worry about a front end. I want to quickly and rapidly create something that I can access data from a server.
For the back
So
end? Okay.
yeah, so rather than focusing on those things, I just want to use Firebase.
Cool.
So React Native Firebase actually has a project that you can download, you can clone,
Nice.
and then you run a script that you change all the properties from their project to your own. So now you have a working app that's connected to Firebase, and now you can just go and build it. And it probably
Yeah.
only takes about, I don't know, 10 minutes to set up.
Oh,
So,
wow.
I mean, those are the kind of things, yeah. I mean, as long as it takes to go to the Firebase console and run a few things, I mean, that's it, and you're connected. And that's kind of how I was able to, in 12 hours, write a little recipe app.
Well, rad. So, like, we're just doing like open forum here and planning the show, right? But I mean, if you feel like getting your hands dirty on some code right now, what Mario and I did was we shared a GitHub when I showed him some stuff. So if you were down to do that, that'd be amazing for me because I've heard you talk about this one before. But we could do anything. So I don't want to pressure you. I'm just saying, you want to
Yeah,
whip?
no, I mean, we can if you want. I think
Let me put it on the dock. See how like I got this menu of like, what can we do, Matt? We talk about the state of the
Yeah.
web.
you're not talking about here. You're talking about now. You're talking about later on. Do we want to
I,
go live to make an app? Or
I'm
no?
saying, I want to do what you're having fun doing, and I'm going to note it on the dock right now. If you see my screen, it's a what do you call it? A React Native Firebase app.
Yeah.
And I think that like for the folks out there that are learning, including me, man, I think that that'd be something cool. What I think would be really cool is if you think that if you want to do that now, like 'cause we could talk about anything, man. We could talk about favorite types of dogs. I don't care. I got 24 of them that I rescued, right? But I mean, what I'm saying is, yeah, let's do it if you want. Or there's something else we could look at in code. But I love mixing it up in the show here. Are you? So are you ready? You
Okay.
want?
I guess
Okay,
let's do it.
let's do it, man. All
Yeah.
right. So I noted it on. So what I'm saying is once you whip this thing down, either during this or after the fact, share it or get it on GitHub with me. So that way, when we meet again, maybe I'll be like, look, I made a component in this thing and I understand more. I don't know. Let's see. So I'm gonna stop sharing and make you the presenter. Please stand by while I figure out how to press buttons. Am I not sharing? Okay, I wasn't even sharing.
Yeah, I'm saying I just see you. So
Okay, you can just hit the sharing button. I did update the dock though, and I thought that. How's my background look?
it looks good. Like you're jumping in and out.
Oh, that's cool.
All right. So let's go ahead and let me
I
get
should
my browser set up here.
should have wore a black shirt. You know, I'm
Well, just
excited.
whatever's opposite the color of what you're doing, or
You,
what's the background. So
yeah, you just got to click that share button there,
yeah, I'm getting on it here.
and I'm gonna go
All
ahead and
right.
I'm gonna lighten up the mood a little bit, and of course I'm gonna play the same music because YouTube won't strip this. But I'm gonna give you some applause to kick this off. Here we go. You may. Good job, Matt. Let's do this. This crowd is fired up.
I didn't hear anything. Was I supposed to hear something?
Well, it's streaming over my end, and unfortunately, yeah, I'm not sure why you don't hear it. I don't.
Oh,
Uh,
probably because it's just a talk between us and it didn't go on there.
it's
Okay.
it's going straight through. It'll be in the final video released on Netflix tonight at midnight. Okay.
So yeah, this is the web page that I'm talking about, and it basically it goes through. Probably should go to the. See, there's a GitHub page. GitHub. I'm sharing the page I'm typing on, right?
Yeah, let me unmute. Yeah, I see GitHub React Native in the
Okay.
URL. Yep.
Just want to make sure I'm sharing the right screen.
You got to do this in IE6 though. No, that's stupid. I don't know why I said that.
IE6 too, right?
Well,
All right.
last
So
company I worked for, they still had to deploy to IE6. Believe it or not, man. and they were doing React. It was a nightmare. Okay, so what do we got here?
So these are the different Firebase modules that it currently supports, and so it tells you the amount of coverage for all the different features that it has. And so basically, I just use authentication, Firestore, and cloud messaging. So there's some other things that are really cool, but I haven't got into that yet. Real-time database is old. Um, it's like the old version of Firestore. And then remote config is kind of neat because it allows you to store your global variables for your React Native on Firebase, and then you can just change them there. Like if you want to change like your API to a different URL, you can actually just put it in a remote config and change. It'll change every single app that's using Firebase uh, to that remote configuration. So that's kind of neat.
That's awesome, dude. I like it. It's simple too. It's like it's all listed right there. Documentation's a big part, you know.
Right, exactly. So I like to do this quick start, and there's two options. It tells you if you're gonna create one or if you want to use the one they have. So you can do a new project, or you can do uh, an existing or new project. But there is a, now I gotta find the link. It looks like this is a little different.
This is the part where I'm supposed to have some jokes ready, but I just don't let me distract you.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out. There's a, should be a setup. Let's go new project. Yeah, it's a whole different website here.
Well, like I was telling you before, our four users, which are probably all from Missouri and in my family, are going to be they're sitting on the edge of the seat. So no
Right? They're
stress.
like, how do you do this?
They're like, what do you mean new website? Get to this. There's no worries, man. We'll figure it out.
Maybe this one. Nope, that's clearly not it.
Maybe it was under.
This might be it.
Okay. There was one for existing apps too. They got the to do app. What was existing? Is that your stuff? Oh yeah, you already have a project.
Here we go. This is it.
If you wouldn't mind throwing that in chat, I'll put it in the doc for folks. If that's cool. Let me get that out of there.
Oh, okay, so there's a new one for V6, but
Okay. Hey, real quick on the React Native stuff. You'd mentioned that there's different versions. What's our latest React Native? Past 55 or something?
6.1, 6.1.
61 or 6.1?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's 0.61.
Oh, 0.61. Okay.
Yeah, let's go through the new project guide. Why not?
What's the worst thing that
Oh, okay,
happen?
you can just do a template, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm already live.
Yeah. The worst thing that can happen is the internet shuts off. That's the worst. Let's go real here. I can't wait to do the live web Rust or Rust application with Brian. We're gonna be scratching our heads for sure.
Yeah, I'm on my Mac laptop, and I'm not real comfortable with it yet. So, see here, with the name variable is used. Oh, okay, got it.
No worries, dude. That's the reality of it, you know. I haven't. I got to fire my Mac back up.
All right, I should be able to do it from here. And then we'll go. What should I call it?
Um, I don't know. Live conversations, live code conversation. It's the Matt and Chad show. 4 users worldwide.
Right, just a real short one like that.
Well, you'd be surprised to watch our analytics. A couple of our videos get tossed up next to videos with 150,000 viewers, and all of a sudden our video is getting viewed too. So I think that stuff picks up over time, man. You know, I don't know. Yeah, we're going
Yeah, I
from.
was thinking about doing something like this in its own, like in its own video, and then post it. Maybe I should do something like that too, or we can take this and cut it.
Yeah,
But
I struggle with that too, and like this guy named Chase Rayner, I always bring him up to you guys. He kind of inspired me. He's like, I'm Chase Rayner. He's like, I don't even. He's like, I got rid of my agency because I don't even like clients. He's like, I just do SEO. He doesn't care. He like the other day I saw him like yawning and like halfway falling asleep during a project, and he just. I'm not saying we do his style, but he's like, I don't even cut my videos. He just goes live. So he probably does produce his commercials. Like he'll stop after an hour and then he'll do a 10-minute end of what he just did and he'll do it professional. And then he'll clip that out for later. So I digress. I'm
right.
just saying, like, who wants to be cutting video forever? Like, I'm sure we'll get there. But it's just better to go live and be silly and tell bad
You
jokes.
outsource that.
Yeah, exactly. I think the best thing to do will be to go live watching your own videos like right now, and then just fast
Yeah.
forward. Like you're like, okay, I'm gonna like go to the next part.
Right? Like, and then sit there and critique yourself, like, oh, I can't
Yeah,
believe I did that.
yeah. Be like, look at this guy in the Matrix head chop off mode here.
Yeah.
Um, it's
I'm
good
gonna
stuff.
remove my. I'm gonna. I'm gonna totally troll my own video post.
No, this is fun stuff, dude. I mean, what better way can we talk about what we love? And then going live actually has gotten me to be more into the stuff I'm working on. So it's been cyclical. It's fun, and we're live, man. And we can't even tell how many people are watching. I'm thinking, I always guess four, but sometimes five. You never know.
Well, I mean, for sure. I mean, if you got four, and if I, everyone knows that I'm here, then it's definitely gonna be four.
Yeah, we're in. We're in there. We're going big.
So,
But yeah, we're having fun. I told some pretty bad jokes with Mario and I. We were just having a good old time. Brian and I, we talked and we had a good time talking about a number of things, React and Next, and he's really into Vue right now. So that was interesting. So yeah.
I feel
Yep.
like sometimes I have to stop myself from going too, like, stretching myself too wide with knowledge. Like
Yeah.
if I just scratch the surface of React, React Native, and things like that, but then now I'm scratching the surface of Vue and Angular and all those things. Like I'm not going to be good at any one of them.
True.
So I'm like, oh, I want to learn this, and then I gotta bring myself back in and say, no, no, you don't need to learn that yet. You need to focus on this. So
Yeah, I think that at least having conversational knowledge for me feels pretty good. Like Vue, like that's why I join all the groups because I just like to get that high level. Like a lot of the guys 6 months ago in the Vue groups were complaining about the changes to the latest Vue being too much like React, and they were mad about it, and they were really mad. A lot of the Vue guys, and then the dust settled, and more people are like jumping on Vue. So it's easier for people to pick up if they're not into the if they don't have any React experience and the way its design architecture is. You know, I digress. You said you have any jQuery experience?
just a little bit. I mean, I found that it was easier to like manipulate the DOM, but now you don't have to worry about that. So
Yeah, and it's like, well, you know what my one complaint would be, and I'm sure there's a way to fix it, is when I'm working with my React app in Next, and I hit save. Thank you for the hot reload, but like the compilation still takes 6 7 seconds, and it's like, "Grrr," and I'm like, then I see the one change. So for me, sometimes I do kind of like the jQuery development where I just hit refresh myself, and it's like it's quick. I can just be making quick changes. So I don't mean to sound complainy, but
No, I
it's a
mean, if you think 6 7 seconds is long, wait till you start doing any sort of mobile development.
oh really?
My
You make one
goodness,
change and it's like, brrr. Yeah, right? Because it has to go out to
it can.
native.
It really depends. Like if you, let's say you add a node module, you have to close down a couple windows, relaunch. I mean,
Right.
sometimes it's pretty quick, sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
Um, but the thing is with React or with any website, you can just look at the developer console and you get a pretty good picture about what you're trying to fix.
True.
In
True.
mobile, you can turn on like debug JS remotely, which allows you to basically look in the regular developer console to see what your problems are, but then it makes your app slower. So sometimes it takes like 5 to 10 seconds for my data
Huh.
to come back from Firebase because it's got to send all the debug stuff to my browser.
Uh,
So so
yeah.
that's some problems, but what else can you do? I mean, how else would you? I mean, I don't know if have you ever done any mobile at all?
Well, yeah, I did build an app for a finance company that was much like Flipboard, and it's iOS native, but I did use the web browser control or whatever they called it. I forget at the
Oh,
time. The
okay.
web view, primarily for most of the UI, but it still had login controls. And then one thing that was tough back then, I don't know about now, was getting push notifications working. That was the biggest part of the app, and getting it cross-platform too. So I got all that done. Yeah, it's pretty busy work to deploy to mobile. Like with web, you could just push to your platform and you're good. But
Well, when I was working on Android native applications, and I didn't, let's say my computer wasn't fast enough to run the virtual device, so I had to plug in a real device, and so there's a program or a plugin, I guess would be called for. It's called Logcat,
huh,
and it allows you to see all of the debug information for every app and every service on the phone.
really?
And so it just like streams from your device to this window. So if your app crashes, it will send the information to Logcat, but it goes so fast that you have to sit there and like time when your program crashes so you can try to see what the actual error is. So I would say that, I mean, one way or another, debugging is going to be the hardest thing on a mobile.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, that was part of it. Um, it was a little bit easier again because I cheated and used the web browser. And not it's probably a waste to even bring it up, but I remember Apple changed the performance of the browser, the embedded browser, from like I think it was iOS 5 going up to 6 or 6 going up to 7, and they made like a conscious change that ruined the performance of the web browser control, and it kind of made my app go really slow. So that bugged me out literally. So yeah, but anyways, I digress. That app is still out there. It works. It looks just like Flipboard. But yeah, I'm real interested in React Native. I've done some stuff with Microsoft and the Evangelist team back when Windows Phone was pushing really hard when they first came out,
Mm-hmm.
and they had a lot of tooling in place that made it a dream to work with that stuff. A nice emulator, nice and fast, dealing with C sharp. It was actually pretty quick. So, what do we got going over there? Cocoa Pads? What's that?
Yeah, I'm trying
Cocoa
to.
Pods.
CocoaPods is the almost like the node module of iOS. And so when you have iOS native modules, they have a CocoaPod, and it's basically just a plugin for iOS.
So hey, so while this is installing, you think this will be another couple minutes? Because
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out why it's doing this, but yeah,
it could,
probably.
it could it happened to Mario too. It could literally be the Zoom is eating up so much memory, and who knows. But if you think that that's going to go while it's going, can we switch context for a minute and can we look at ES6 and I can ask you a couple questions? Like, that I know you know the answer to, or that we could can we talk a little bit about like for the folks out there who are new and for myself whose legacy I guess legacy I need to get a little stronger at writing code. Can we maybe look at is it done?
I'm just gonna skip Cocoa Pods.
Okay. Yeah, I don't mean to like go all over the board, but if we needed to
No, yeah, no, we can do that. No, yeah, yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, like so. I mean, I've been looking at what destructuring is, right? And sort of in your own words, like, what do you think that is? Like, it's like you take a large object and you're like recasting it to a smaller object, so you don't and using the variables with that. Like, what's the best way to? I know I could Google it, but I mean, can we take a look at that? Kind of teach
Yeah,
the
I mean,
new.
basically what it's doing is rather than saying like you have a an object with a property, instead of calling the object with the property, you're just calling it by the property. And you get to choose what properties you're going to use this on. So if you
So
have like
let me. Okay, do you see the chat? Let me send you a chat. You should have got a.
send it to me yet.
I sent it on the Zoom chat.
Is that it?
It's like a link to developer.mozilla. And I literally Googled destructuring.
Okay.
So this is like, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I mean, can you explain a little bit about destructuring? I don't know. Like what are we looking at here?
Okay, so I'll give you an example here on line 10, right?
Let me see.
So you see it?
Yeah.
So on line 10, you have A, B, and then rest. And so basically what it seems to me is that it's assigning a variable to this. It's assigning a variable to this. This is A, and this is B. And then this, it's just going to actually output this.
And that's on line 10 is the three dots. That's the spread operator. Is that correct?
Yeah, and so basically what it's doing, it's saying that you can call this whatever you want,
Yeah.
but it's saying that the rest of the array is going to be in this variable. And so that's why
Interesting.
the expected output is 30, 40, 50.
I love it. Okay. And so when you do destructuring, are we talking about dealing with more complex arrays and objects? And it's like, I want to cast this data into something smaller that I can reutilize instead of recalling the larger structure every time? Or what's the benefit of
So
destructuring?
like in React, for instance, right, you have
Yeah.
props. And so you can just do like const and then let's say prop 1 comma prop 2, just because I don't want to name them, come up with funny names, equals this dot props. Now I can call whatever by this dot props dot prop 1, or now I can just call it by prop 1.
Ah,
And so these are
interesting.
just properties, like, but they have to be named whatever the property is of the object.
Makes sense. Okay. Beautiful.
And so it just, yeah, I mean, you could do something like var prop 1 equals this dot props dot prop 1,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like that's something that's pretty common with JavaScript, right?
Yeah.
Now with the structuring, you basically took this line of code and put it here in 1. So you don't have to do like, oops. You don't have to do like prop 2, now you have a whole nother line,
Uh-huh.
because you want to, you want to shorten it up, right? You want to shorten up the reference to that variable. And so
Okay.
rather than doing like this, now you're just calling it by prop 1, prop 2.
Classy. I like that. And so this dot props. So what if this dot props was a much larger object of data or an array? Is that's kind of what we're saying up on line one? Like,
You mean, so like if you have like 20, you might have 20 properties, but you only need 2 of them, then you can just structure it like that.
yeah, makes sense. Okay, so that seems pretty straightforward. And like I see it sometimes used with map and things like that too. And obviously the spread operator was one way to get a part of it. That's neat. I like it. Is there any other examples on that page? Or is there any other like
As far as restructuring,
I saw someone do a destructure today on a video and he was doing it with the new hooks for state, and it was pretty in depth. So I'm not saying that we have to do that, but I mean, it was an
Oh,
example
you're
of
talking about U State?
yeah, yeah. He destructured used state, and I think it was on YouTube, and he's a pretty popular guy. I can't think of his name right now.
Well, I imagine that if you just replaced like count with a destructuring object, it's the same thing. Because all it's doing, the first variable is just saying, hey, this is the whatever the object is, and so now if you turn it into an object with curly braces and then call the properties, it's basically the same thing.
Nice, cool. What about okay? So is there so you said that there was areas like that that some of your students you guys like to focus on. How's our install coming on the other side over there?
Let's see, where's my
That was awesome. Thank you, man. I think I need to
where's my
PayPal you.
window here?
I need to PayPal you some student money there. Like, let me ask you a question that. No, it's rare that I get to just conversate about code. Like I can read about it and play with it, but it's nice to hear that other people's
Let's
truths. What do we got there? No Android.
wonder why my I'm not sure why that is not working. That works. Yeah, that's the interesting thing about how React Native works is that initially in development, it'll actually talk to the server to get its code.
Huh.
And
Which,
so
which server? Remote?
this one, so like
Local.
so this right here where it says this Metro bundler, that's what it does is it converts it to native code. And
Nice.
so now if my application ran, then I could launch it. So let me see if I can open it up here. In Android Studio. See, I'm gonna open it up.
Cool.
But I need to move it over. Give me a second here.
I'm gonna get a little more coffee.
Go for it.
Forgive me while I fill up the coffee machine. There we go. And I wonder why I can't get to bed at a normal hour here. Let's see. It's been getting
Sorry, I
dark.
have this on a screen that's really, really small, so
No worries. Oh, okay. You got something up there.
no.
I saw waffle and I saw Gradle and I started getting hungry.
Look, I'm on this chaffle kick. You ever heard of a chaffle? Probably not.
You know where I heard of it is on from you on Facebook. I saw you a couple posts about. Is it the keto diet? No.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, man, it looks good. Whatever it is you're putting up there, I think I saw a donut egg burger. I don't know what I was seeing. I'm not sure.
Oh, that was not keto, but yeah, look, at the fair here in North Carolina, they sell Krispy Kreme hamburger with it's Krispy Kreme has buns. So yeah, now it's downloading Gradle, but so yeah, hopefully it'll start this app up.
That's cool. I was gonna,
Gradle gets all.
yeah, I was gonna ask you. So there's, look, I know I could Google it, but there's an ES7, right? There's ES6, there's ES7, and there's even ES20. I don't know what comes after ES7, but all kinds
So
of new.
what they
Yeah,
ES 2018, I think
right.
is ES6,
Okay.
So I think they changed it from like ES678 to like ES whatever the year is.
Uh, so what's TS 2020 looking like? Be like
I don't know, but
artificial intelligence.
I like the things like I like the map function, and I like the find. I like those functions, filter, sort. I like those
Yeah,
things. I like the spread operator.
yeah, that's cool stuff. I used Map the other day, and I used it not with an array. I actually stuffed an array of objects in there, and then I kind of cheated during my loop, and I did like object.keys, and I just felt like this isn't very performant. I'm like, this can't be the best way to get the data out of this. Basically building a navigation. So one of these times I'll have to look at that with you, get your
I mean, I do
opinion.
the same thing because the idea is though is that you're using properties and you don't know the names of the properties, right? And so if you don't know
Yeah,
the names of the properties, the only way to do it is to do objects.keys. It's
right.
just the only way.
Yeah.
Like you're not gonna loop through something you don't know to get something you don't know. You know?
True. I just wasn't sure if it was that performant to do to check because like basically I can show it to you if you want, but I have like I'll use my hands. I'm in a list of items, but they're like name value pair objects, comma separated,
Yeah,
and it's like
yeah,
name of the link and then maybe the href, the hypertext reference. And so like yeah, I want to build the navigation as it loops through. I use map, and it's like an array with that array of objects in there, and then as it goes through and it's looping. Um, I basically do object.keys, and I'm just figuring like being a native Java. I'd say I'm a native JavaScript programmer from way back. It just doesn't feel like that's the most performant way. I would love to test stuff like that and be like I should be writing it out different than just using methods that save me time. Um,
yeah.
I don't know. I know that there's people out there that argue performance of JavaScript, and I don't have any idea about how performant map is and all those others.
So I'll give you an example. So I don't necessarily want to go through all this because of the Google services.json right now.
Okay.
Basically, it's just a configuration file for it, but without having this file, can't go further. But
But the gist is that you can get the full package with the Firebase connection, and you're off to the races
yeah, once
pretty
you
quick.
follow the couple instructions, put the Google services.json there. I mean, you'll have an up and running application that's connected to Firebase. So, but as far as what you were saying, it's funny because there was a code review that one of my coworkers did, and he said, because I used filter, and I used filter just to remove the first item in the array,
Hmm.
and so I did filter, and then I did map, right? So because here's the thing with map, you can't do any sort of filtering it. So if you return something, you'll still have that many objects when you're done. So I used filter to remove the first item in the array, and then I mapped through the array. And so he says, well, you should be using slice instead because in older browsers, such and such and such, right?
Yeah.
As far as performance wise, he said you shouldn't have to loop through just to remove the first item. So curiosity had me, and so I looked it up, and there was a website that actually showed you the performance of using the different functions, and one of them basically said if you're doing less than like 100 items in your array, then filter is actually faster than slice.
Interesting.
But if you went through like 10,000 items, then slice is better.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's the interesting part. Like I worked, like Ivan a little bit, and he's going to be on the show soon. And I met Ivan. I worked next to him, and he was writing D3 code, and he would go home on the weekend and come back with 5,000 new lines of code. The guy is a JavaScript genius, and he's not afraid to write it. But the executives on our team demanded that the piece that I wrote was like a little application standalone, be in pure JavaScript. So, and he was writing D3. So we always had these discussions as we sat by each other, what was more performant, and even like using slice or splice or shift or pop or all the different ways you can manipulate data. And so I think that's an interesting point is that even as ES6 and 7 and 8 and 9 and 10 come around, whatever the names are, I think I want to start being able to look up performance because these conversations happen at work, right? It's like you should have got the first element this way or that way. But that's interesting. So I noted the document about this, and I think that if you end up getting this running and you end up GitHubbing it to me, it's something we could look at in a future talk. Um, but yeah, that's interesting stuff there. So yeah, kind of all over the
I could
road.
probably just. I'll get it. I'll get the Google say while we're talking. I'll get it. I'll get the Google services.json.
Are you
I have
okay?
to get it running. I'm weird, man. Like I have to get things working. I can't just leave them like that. That's why I work like 12 hours on code. Because I'm like, oh, I just want to get this working.
Well, I don't have any kids to pick up from the daycare, so let's do this. If you want to do it, but yeah, I'm trying to just take advantage of your big brain there and just be like, and it's not like I said, it's not often, especially when you're a remote worker like I am, that you really get water cooler. I don't get too many water cooler conversations, or there's not tons of really good devs on the team who are doing your type of work. Like I've been on teams where there's a few front end devs, but there are different skill levels, and we don't really take the time to talk about stuff. So this is nice. It's nice to talk about JavaScript.
I never did either. Like, I had my own business. Nobody reviewed my code. My customers reviewed my code. Did it work? Did it not work? Like that
Right.
was the gist of it, right? So
Yeah.
I'm like, performance. Like, if it doesn't work on your system very good, like you need a new system. I don't want to talk to you about performance. That's just how it worked out.
Yeah.
So
So the new stuff, the new things in ES6. I'm gonna pull it up and kind of bring them up, and I'll quiz you. How about that? No.
no,
What's
yeah, no, do it. I want to see what I do know. Yeah.
okay? What's new in ES6? And maybe I'll share my screen to keep it fun. But so the introduction to the ES6 spec lists all the new features. Here we go. This one looks like a terrible doc. How about I switch to sharing for a little bit, and then I'll pull it on and
Yeah, I'll
off the
work on
screen.
this.
Okay. You got to stop sharing, it says, which is really caring. Sharing is caring.
Right.
All right, so there's a ton of stuff here. An overview of what's new in ES6. This chapter collects the overview sections of all the chapters in this book. So I don't know if we need a book, but I'll keep that tab open. I'll look for the what's new in ES6. ECMA 6 new features overview from the .org. All right, are we ready? It rhymes with schmonstance. What do you think that is? No, Constance. Let me share my screen. Oh crap! I misclicked. Oh no! Now we're having fun. All right, so Constance, you know that one. I'm gonna take it off screen here and tell me about. You gotta answer in a form of a question, like on. Let's
On
talk a little.
Jeopardy.
Yeah.
Jeopardy.
All right, let's talk a little bit about scoping with ES6 and block scoped variables, specifically with let, and I'll bring it over on the screen to give you a little helper. Um, so,
Okay.
so yeah, so like let versus const for all those beginners, including those legacy rookies like me.
So I don't know too much about it, but this is the way I look at it. I never use let
No?
because my understanding of let is you can have a constant as a global variable, and then you can use let to basically override that constant and you reuse the variable,
Huh.
right?
Okay.
And to me, I'm like, why am I going to reuse a variable if it's a global variable? I'm just going to call it something else, and then I can assign it. So why would I be using let? Like I can't think of a reason to use let versus const or var.
Well, I think that what I've learned, and again, this is a rookie talking, that let is it's scope based. So like now you can have scope inside of the braces of like a for loop, whereas before you would set your variable above your loop, and you would have access to that same variable inside your loop because of the scoping. But with let, you could like actually have a variable called let I, but then you can actually override let I down inside the method here, and then you can also keep scoping here too. So it helps with collisions too. Like if you got a big code base and someone's like, hey, var I way over somewhere else, and they put it in the wrong place, it doesn't collide with yours. I don't know, but it's a scope. It's a little more than like var and shit. I guess I don't know what I'm talking about here,
I
but
mean, I get what you're saying, right?
here's the difference between 5 and 6. Let's take a look. I had learned something the other day, and the guy's basically like always use let and never use var, and then the next guy says, he's like, I use var, but I use it in the right places, and it's all about hoisting, and maybe Brian could help us too. But like, look here. So here's a for loop with let I, and then they got let x, and then they use I
Yeah.
again, and then they use y, and so it's internal, and then down here they use it again. So that's not a great
Okay, so
example.
what? Well, right. So look at this example, right? You're declaring the variable outside of the for loop, right? In the second part,
Mm-hmm.
when you can declare it just the same way inside the variable. Oh, wait. So does that mean this is the difference to me? On the top example, does let y allow you to use that y somewhere else?
Let I or let y.
Let y. Can I use y in callbacks?
Great question. Let's
Because I
figure.
can't.
Yeah, let's figure this out because I thought when you use let, it's certainly scoped.
It
Like
stays inside the for loop, right?
that's what
You're
I
not
thought.
getting it outside.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And it also, and again, we could just Google this and not like be like guessing, but it's also you can override it. Now with const, I believe if you have an object inside of a const variable, you can change the value of the properties inside the object value as the value side of it. You can change what its values, but consts are supposed to be constants, no? Like they don't. You can change their what's inside of them, but not really change their value. Let's Google this shit.
Right.
Let's Google it. Let's move on to something else. No. Let const and var explain or difference. And it's not really clear, right? Because everybody, this is the same as the other guy who says like, oh, you should always use triple equal signs for all of your comparison operators, and then
See, that makes sense to me.
but then the guy who wrote you don't know JavaScript comes out and says it's actually not the most performant thing to do if you are in control of the type of string or ints that you're sending in. He said it's actually more performant to use the double equal sign, and then you're just kind of stuck like, all right. And I get what
Well,
he's saying.
okay, sure.
Like if we don't know what we're getting, then yeah, use triple because of type
If you don't
coercion.
know what you're getting, then you should know,
Then you
right?
should
You
use
should
triple,
know.
right? Yeah, most of the time you know what you're getting because you wrote the method. So it's like maybe this is the part of the languages where it's like going hard and fast on decisions. I just don't know. But here, let's see what these guys say on dev. That'd be cool if it was Brian who wrote this. So here's like
Right.
var greet hey hi, and then there's a function var hello equals hello.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, let's get a, and then there's hey hi, console log error, hello is not defined. So yeah, we get var. Var is like we're scoped outside of the function here, like, and then
Right.
right here when you do var hello is equal to hello, and we do console log hello, it no longer error hello is not defined. It kind of recasts it. Maybe it overrides.
No, because the top one is not var hello.
Correct. Yeah, it's outside the scope.
It's just proving that that
It's
var stays inside the scope.
Yeah, like they always warned us as JavaScript programmers, like if you forget to put this on here, that it ends up outside of the scope in often in the window tray and the root, like in what am I trying to say? In window dot, it
Right.
becomes like that. So okay, we know var does that, and then here's var,
Yeah.
but like where's let's get into let. Okay, let is preferred for variable declaration now. It's no surprise as it comes as improvement to the var declarations, allows us to solve the problem that was raised in this last subheading. All right, so are you loving this? Let greeting equal this, let times equals 4. If times is greater than 3, let hello equals say hello instead.
Yeah, like I don't see a difference here. Like I still don't see a difference between var and let in this respect.
Oh, look, it does have access. Oh, see, hello is still not defined. Correct. but you can still console log that. What you see that using hello outside, it's blocked. The curly braces where it was defined returns an error. This is because let variables are block scoped. Yeah, didn't we have that same issue up here?
Yeah, like I can't think of a difference.
Huh. Trippy.
All right, let's keep going. Maybe it's all
Okay.
gonna come clear.
Like, okay. Should we get a different example? Or should I just keep scrolling up and down? Sorry. All right. So, like,
Yeah, no, I don't know.
let greeting equals say hi, let greeting equals that. It's time to bust out an IDE, dude. And, okay, difference between let and const in easiest way with. Oh, God, it's going to warn me for reading too much. Stop it. Table of contents, blocks, and scope. Variable declaration with let and const. In ES6, finally, we can declare variables with let and constants with const keywords from name variables should be able to change the values, and constants should not allow change to the values. So helpful. So in ES5, var x equals 14, x is equal to 12. Console log x, you get 12.
Yeah.
In ES6, let x equal 14, x is equal to 12. Console log x, you get 12. Okay. Y 12, console log Y, type error. So what do we see there?
Because it's a const. You can't
Oh yeah,
change it.
okay. Scope of let, const, and var. Var A B, let B, B10, const
All right,
A.
let's go down where it says in this scope we will differentiate between var and let.
Thank God, man. Let and const have a block scope, but var has function scope. All right. So that makes, there you go, dude. Block
Doesn't
scope.
tell me anything.
Well, like the if statements, I think it really has to do with what they're saying, like inside of an if statement. That's okay. If you do not understand the above line, it is completely okay. We're going to understand this below.
Oh, okay. Got it. Okay, so if you
Here's,
had let status equal adult, you couldn't access it outside of the variable.
is that a fact? Yeah, I think that's right. Oh, outside of if, it protects it. Like
Yeah, look
if
down.
let was right there, yeah. Console log,
Yeah,
yeah,
right
reference
there.
error.
Uh,
Okay, so now you let can be protected inside the if statement block. So function scope for the var keyword and block scope for let. All right.
but okay, so I get that, right? You can declare a var inside a different scope and use it outside. Okay, great. But can you tell me at what point would you care? Like we've been doing it long enough, right? We know like we can just put a var on the outside or the inside and use it or not. So what would be the really the point of having a let? Like if I put var status equals adult, I'm just not going to use it outside of
Ah,
that scope.
the only thing I could guess is that like more than one member on the team uses the variable I and isn't paying attention and accidentally introduces a collision and it's hard to debug. Like let
If you
status.
use I outside of a for loop,
Well, no,
then
like var status. Like if I say var status, it's going to be outside in a much larger, maybe a function or maybe it just seems like it's for protection of like against collisions. I don't know.
I guess. I mean,
Till now, we have learned var and let can change their value, and const cannot change its value. And again, I just read something the other day, and the guy showed you that you can actually change, like you can assign an object as the value of a const, but you can actually change the property values of what that object has as a value. Like, so it is
yeah.
different. So that was like, okay, consts are not exactly 100% constant, but what's
Well, they
inside of it.
are. It's
Okay.
just like it's like I'm a person. That's a constant. Like let's say the class person,
Ah,
right?
yeah, but then the
I
properties
can
like
change
tired
my
versus,
look. I can
yeah.
change my weight. I can change those things about me. That doesn't change that I am a person. It just changed the attributes of me.
Yes, but
But
that's just, okay.
as long as it's a if it's an array, you can change the parameters in the array. Like you can change as long as it stays an array, it's fine. But you can't change like You can't change a string, or you can't change an integer. You can't change, let's say, if it's a null, which I don't know why you would do that, but
Says when you're adding to an array or an object, you're not reassigning or declaring redeclaring the constant. It's already declared and assigned. You're just adding to the list that the constant points to. So this works fine. So you can push. You can
yeah, you can add variables. You can
and
add
then
things to it too. You just
can
can't.
you delete unshift? Yeah, it looks like you can do that. But then it says but neither of these will work, which is like reassigning the value in there. Okay, yeah, makes sense. Good stuff. Good stuff. So, like, for interview questions, like, what someone's gonna ask you, like, some tricky question about const, and then like, when would you use let? I'm still stuck on that. When would you use let?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I really can't see the point of it. I understand why it's used, but I just don't really see the point of it. Like, I'm probably never going to be a let user.
Not until the team gets mad at you and they're like, you need to be, because the teams do that. Like, I used to get yelled at for writing native JavaScript. They're like, you should be using jQuery for everything. And I was like, are you sure? So, okay. I mean, if that's how the team lead wants it, I'll do it. But I
Well,
never,
most of the team looks at me as far as React Native stuff. They look at me as like I know what I'm doing, so they're not going to check that kind of stuff like let or things like that.
let's check out Brian's article on hoisting, which I think really ties into.
What is hoisting?
Well, hoisting is like dealing with the scopes. The first thing to understand about hoisting, it's a feature of JavaScript. Some makers like Python used to do it. It's kind of like the window object versus like you're inside a closure, like a function, which is another scope, and then the block level. So like when you want to get a variable value or a variable pushed to a higher section or block, you hoist it. I think that's. I mean, I'm not saying it exactly perfect, but so what does he have to say? Let's see if we can. Let's see if we can learn something from Brian. Hoisted var variables will return undefined because you haven't assigned them a value until okay that. So it's also the order. So like a lot of times when things get compiled down at runtime, JIT, some things still work even if you don't declare them in a certain order that's more for programmers to read, and that's
Yeah.
where hoisting allows you to. Expressing using var are hoisted but cannot be called right away. Function using the var keyword. Okay. Variables and functions expressions aside with const and let are not hoisted as they use block scope. Interesting. So that's the quick and okay. Right on, Brian. So I don't know. So to be determined on that. So where did we leave off on our 30 tips? So we talked a little bit about ES6 features. What about classes? That's a new feature in ES6. How do you feel about that stuff? Like
I mean,
we're now getting
the
into
only thing I
hooks.
could think of, I like the fact that I mean, with classes, as far as you can override functions. Uh,
Yeah, and now like why is React moving into using hooks? Like they just like classes was just too much duplicative code with setters and getters. Like this is easier.
well,
Um,
okay, so consider on a regular lifecycle and on the class component, how many lifecycle methods are there? Like what, eight, nine,
yeah,
like that?
yep,
Let's say there's nine. On a class component, it runs every single one of those every single time, no matter what.
okay, makes
But
sense.
if you use a functional component and let's say use effect instead, it only does those things. So where you're normally running like six to eight, nine, 10 different functions in a class component, with use effect, you're actually only running just the one or the two. So performance wise, that makes sense to me.
Okay, so hooks are more performant. And do you write less code? Is that even a word? Performant?
Okay, so if you consider like you have component will update, component will mount, like you have like all these different lifecycle methods
Yeah.
that all get combined into one. So all of those things get combined into just use effect.
Interesting. And it is the new stuff for a reason, so it must be easier to read code. a little more less, a little more performant.
So what is
Um,
it like? Components will update, right? Component will
yeah,
update. That's what.
right.
So in that one, right, you have to compare your previous props to your current state, right? So now, if you're using use effects, you don't have to compare your props or your state. You can just use it.
So what's the new stuff? So switching gears, just all over the road here. I don't know what your install's looking like, but have you heard about the new React Suspense? I was asking Brian about that.
I I don't know. It was I think it's new, but I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, I know nothing really either. We like Brian wasn't 100% either, so I'm just gonna bring it up again. So it's for like data fetching, and it seems a little bit more like lazy loading in Ajaxy type of stuff, where it says suspense component lets you wait for some code to load and declaratively specify a loading state like a spinner while you're waiting. So it feels a little bit like await async stuff, but that's probably too simplified. Suspense
Yeah,
let
that's probably what it is. It's probably just like it's like a promise built in that you don't have to like do the promise, you know?
Yeah, here it is. Here's an example. Suspense. You can just wrap the suspense tags around waiting for your component to load. So that's interesting. Cool. It's not even like really in the spec yet, I don't think, but it's supposedly coming and they're still working on it. So caution. So yeah. So I'm gonna update the doc and take a look at some of the stuff that we covered on our talk here. And I really want to get out of you some stuff that you like, so that if I can wrangle you in again to another one of these learning paths, we can build on it, right? And I know you're a busy guy, but like I said, you help so many people, so I figured I'd pull you in. Let me grab that doc. How are things on that install over there? Is it still a pain? Can you hear my dogs are getting
Yeah.
hungry?
Well, I kind of stopped working on it for a bit.
I don't blame you. But yeah, it's like let's see. You can probably hear my dogs whining for food. I'm gonna get them in a few minutes. But let me get that doc up, and I'm gonna mute for a sec.
Okay.
Introduction live. Dun, 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 dun. Just gonna sing along with this music. Dun, 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 dun. Share my mail with the world and be like, yeah, look at all these recruiters spamming me. It's just
Oh man,
amazing.
I still get so many emails no matter
Oh
how
my
many times
god.
I try to remove it.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about LinkedIn. I mean, I just feel like that the industry has done the software world a disservice by systematizing the hiring process because it's just so chop shoppy and so many. No one's really paying attention to our portfolios, and we made not mine. Like some people look at my stuff, but it's a little bit too spammy. You know, like
So
all
this is
my.
what I did.
What'd you do?
I've noticed that I get emails from recruiters that have not looked at my resume at all. Like I get emails that are like, "We're so happy we found you. You meet the criteria exactly. We're so happy that you know C++." And I'm like, "Well, because I have the letter C on my resume. That's what happened." Um, but so what I did, I just stopped reading job descriptions. So I turn it back to them, right? So I can spend how much time reading a job description, figuring out if I fit, and then making a really nice cover letter and really nice optimized resume, and then I can send it out. Or I can just send it out to everybody. I don't care. I'll send it out. I actually got an
That
email to
yeah.
the head of neurology at a hospital. I'm not kidding you. I got an email about that job.
Well, and that's the strange state of affairs. The only way we could fight this, literally the legal spamming of the recruiters, is to spam back and then just have a conversation. I told you when I was sending my resume out last year, before I picked up my clients, thank goodness, that I had someone helping me send like 50 to 100 resumes out a day. I could not psychologically work on code and come up to speed on things and be sending that many resumes. But I mean, I got so many interviews and the same thing, like uh, artificial intelligence jobs, and it's like, no, I don't have some of the things that you listed, and you said you liked my resume, and it's really strange, the state of the web. So like I just really want to work with people that said, hey, we saw your goofy YouTube video where you were making code, and we want you. That's who I want to work with. Like that's
Yeah,
throwing up my hands and be like, if you don't like my resume, then you didn't read it. But I don't know. Anyways, I digress.
I
So
feel like I got lucky with the job that I have now because I feel like I had not just a recruiter, but I had almost like a headhunter kind of thing. Like they're a recruiter, but they actively did their job of recruiting me, and then they sold me to this other company. So it's basically what happened is it
oh
was a
man.
temp agency that was for hire, and so rather than hiring me to that company and then contracting me out, it was a full hire. So they basically just they flipped me like I was a house, which I was that's fine with me. And they just picked up my resume and then sold me out, which I was totally okay with because I got a job, right?
Yeah, it's a weird world how the recruiters do it, and they're a young industry, and like so I wasn't like that big into Josh Fluke, and I don't mean to bring him up on our video, but he's going through a series now where he's talking about how the industry's so messed up. He records his live interviews, or he goes on LinkedIn and he's saying the same things that we're going through. That it's like, oh, we want you to come up to speed on data structures and algorithms. We want you to know all this stuff. We want you for front end, but you should know back end. And then we also want you to send out these resumes and do all these tests and make little mini applications. It's just too much, and it's kind of overwhelming, to be honest. So this is why I think it's fun to go live and just make code and stuff, you know,
So
because
I noticed that same pattern, right? Like I had one company, they wanted me to write a node application, which I never wrote a node application before, but I'm like, okay, it's JavaScript, I'll figure it out. So I wrote this node application, and then they said, well, not only do we want you to write this node application, but you also have to write the unit test for it. So here I am spending, I don't know, 10, 12 hours writing this node program that they wanted, and then I needed to write unit tests for it. And then, I mean, I did get the interview, so I'm grateful for that, but then I didn't end up getting the job for whatever reason, even though I passed all their tests and I did everything that I was asked. So what I did was I turned that code challenge into a portfolio element. I put it on GitHub and I used their terminology and everything, and I just told everybody, hey, here's my node application that I wrote. I mean, so you want to waste my time, I'm just going to turn that around and use it for something good. So um,
yeah, and that's my dogs are going crazy. That's exactly what they say to do, right? But I mean, like imagine if you were going to hire someone to paint your house, right? And we put out a rec, and we said, go find me, and I'm going to use an intermediary partner. Go find me the best painter for my house, and let everybody paint the best door and bring it by and show me, and then I'll pick the
right.
best. And it's like that's just not fair. And so I didn't mean to turn this whole like dialogue you and I have into that, but it's the state of the web today. But maybe artificial intelligence will do better pairing. Maybe it'll start to pair you with the right job and the right company, and they'll just learn to trust that software. And maybe all those requests I get to be a Salesforce developer, it's not on my resume, but I get all of them on LinkedIn. It's like, hey, Chad, we love your resume. You don't even need to know Salesforce. Would you come on over? And it's like, oh my goodness, guys, like, no. But so, anyways, I digress. I love the career that you've led and that we could get on here and hack some code. So I actually noted here that when we get together again, which I'm going to hope that you will, I think, I could talk you into it again, that we could look at the project that you had. You'll probably have it running, maybe make some changes, see if it turns into something. But then working code on different, using let, const, var, we'll be a little sharper on that, right? Because we talked about it. We're inquisitive. When we get back together, maybe we'll touch on it again. But something I want to leave you with as we kind of wrap up some of our goals, throw some stuff in here that you may want to look at when we meet again. Because man, I learned stuff working with you, and I love the time that you share with the folks on Facebook. that you share with our group and you share with me. And whoever watches this video, I hope they're entertained. But look at
Well,
this. Yeah, what's up? Tell me what you think.
I'm all for helping people if they want to be helped. Like I have some students who aren't turning in assignments. That's not my problem. What my problem is, you're turning in the assignment, but you're not doing a good job because you don't know something. Okay, let's get to the point of figuring out what it is that you need to learn, and then let me tell you how I can help you understand what it is that you want to learn. And so I see some of these people on Facebook, and they just say, "Oh, I want to learn React Native. Can you teach me?" Well, the answer is no, because you didn't take the first step. Right? You take a step, I'll help you with the second, third, and fourth step. So if I see that, hey, this person, they tried, like they really busted it out, they tried their best, I'll help them.
You're the
If you
man.
don't give the effort, why do I?
Matt, you're the man. And like I just got your message and I had it on the screen here privately. It's like, hey, this is good, but I gotta get going soon. So I love talking tech and I'm glad I could drag you through this for this long. I'll leave you with this and say that this is something I'll be bringing up to the guys as we do our cycle. This is a 500 interview React questions, and there's some deep stuff in here. If you Google it, 500 React questions, and I think if we get together again when we do, that these are the kinds of things that we can just touch on too. I don't know if you're interested in it, but there's some really deep
No,
stuff.
I like that. I do. Because
So
I mean, because I use React on a daily, that I do need to know these things. So
so I'm gonna put that right here. And with that said, I'm gonna say, man, this has been a milestone and an honor to do this with you. It's our first. It's a planning one. We did run a little long, and I'm super grateful for your time, man. So this has been awesome.
yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
All right. So, okay. Well, dude, have a good time, and I'll see you on YouTube, and then we'll talk really soon. I'll see you on the channels.
All right, take care.
Okay, brother. Talk to you soon. Let me close out the long goodbye because I got to get OBS and shut it down. This is fun.